And you think that's appropriate? To ask me that right here? The TSA agent, let's call him Miller, leans back. A practiced smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Just doing my job, ma'am. Standard procedure. His badge gleams under the harsh fluorescent lights. BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport. Busy Tuesday morning. The line behind me shifts, restless. A sigh from someone impatient. My boarding pass is in my hand. My ID is right there. He scanned it, looked at me. Then looked back, longer this time. That's when he leaned in slightly. Lowered his voice just enough. Said it wasn't about the ID. It was about the pin. The congressional pin on my lapel. He tapped his own chest lightly. You sure that's yours? The question hung there. Thick and heavy, like the humidity outside. The air crackled. I felt eyes on my back. The man behind me cleared his throat. A woman adjusted her rolling suitcase. Click, click, click. I took a slow breath, held it, let it out. My voice stayed level, measured. Yes, I'm quite sure. I'm Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, representing the 30th District of Texas. He kept smiling that smile. A little wider now, almost a smirk. Congresswoman, fancy title. Doesn't quite match the presentation. Presentation. My head tilted slightly, almost imperceptibly. What presentation is that, Agent Miller? His eyes flickered down, my simple black suit, my hair. Then back to my eyes. Just different than expected, more casual. He waved a hand dismissively. Let's see that carry on again. Again, you just scanned it. Humor me, procedure. He pulled the bag back off the belt. Roughly. The contents shifted. A murmur rippled through the line. Low whispers. He unzipped it with unnecessary force. Rifled through clothes, toiletries, papers. His movements were deliberate, slow. Performing for the cue. Establishing control. I watched his hands. Noticed the slight tremble. Was it anger, nerves? Or just the coffee kicking in? He pulled out a folder, thick with legislative notes. What's all this, light reading? He chuckled, no one else did. The silence stretched. It became uncomfortable. Even for him. His smile tightened. He looked back at my pin. Then at me. You know, anyone can buy those pins online. It's not proof of anything. My turn. I kept my gaze steady. Direct. You're suggesting I'm impersonating a member of Congress. Is that the official assessment, Agent Miller? His confidence wavered, just a fraction. A flicker in his eyes. I'm just verifying, thoroughness, it's key. For security, everyone's security. He zipped the bag, shoved it back onto the rollers. But didn't clear me. He crossed his arms, still blocking my path. The line behind me was definitely restless now. Audible groans, shifting feet. Someone called out, hey, what's the holdup? Miller ignored them, focused entirely on me. His posture screamed authority. But his eyes searched mine. Looking for what? Fear, anger, a reaction he could use. He wouldn't find it. Not the kind he wanted. I simply stood there, waiting, meeting his gaze, letting the silence do the work. The power dynamic shifted. Slowly, almost imperceptibly. He was the one looking uncomfortable now. Trapped in the scene he created. He cleared his throat. Just need to run your ID again. Make absolutely sure. He picked up my driver's license. Walked it over to another machine. His back to me. Shoulders tense. I could feel the audience behind me. Leaning in. watching the quiet drama unfold. This wasn't procedure. This was something else. And everyone knew it. He came back, slid the ID across the counter. Still avoiding eye contact. Everything seems technically in order. Technically, the word hung there. Another deliberate choice. Another small cut. Yes, technically. You can proceed. He gestured vaguely towards the concourse. But his tone was flat, defeated. I didn't move immediately. I picked up my ID, slid it back into my wallet. Slowly, deliberately, I adjusted the pin on my lapel. The one he questioned. My eyes never left his face. Thank you for your thoroughness, Agent Miller. My voice was calm, even pleasant. But the subtext was sharp. It ensures everyone feels equally scrutinized. His face flushed slightly, a blotchy red creeping up his neck. He finally met my gaze. Anger was there now, barely contained. Just doing my job. Like you do yours, I suppose. The I suppose was the final jab. Weak, pettish. I offered a small nod. Not a smile, just acknowledgement. And I walked past him. Didn't look back. The silence from the line was absolute. Until I was 10 feet away. Then the whispers erupted. Not impatient now. Something else. Shock, sympathy, disgust. I didn't know, didn't need to. I just kept walking. Heels clicking softly on the polished floor. The encounter wasn't over. Not really. It was just the beginning. He thought he'd won a small victory. Asserted his dominance, put someone in their place. He didn't realize. He just lit a fuse. A very public one. My phone buzzed as I walked towards the gate. Then again and again. Someone must have filmed it. Of course they did. I glanced back towards the security checkpoint. Miller was arguing with his supervisor now. Gesturing wildly. The supervisor looked stressed. Caught in the glare of dozens of phones. Still recording. The air in the terminal felt different. Charged. Like before a storm. I found a seat near my gate. Opened my laptop, tried to focus on work. But the words swam. The agent's smug face kept appearing. Doesn't quite match the presentation. Anyone can buy those pins online. Technically in order. Microaggressions. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Each one designed to diminish, to question, to other. It wasn't the first time. Not by a long shot. Being a black woman in America. Being a black woman in Congress. You develop a thick skin. You have to. But sometimes it still finds a way through. That feeling of being seen. But not recognized. Judged before you even speak. I remembered another time, years ago. In a courtroom, young lawyer, eager, prepared. The judge looked over his glasses. Are you the defendant, dear? He'd called me dear. Assumed I was the one on trial. Not the one arguing the case. The memory felt fresh, raw. Same feeling, different uniform. The casual bias wrapped in politeness. Or procedure. The need to constantly prove you belong. That your credentials are real. That your presence isn't a mistake. Or a threat. My phone buzzed again, a text from my chief of staff. Video of TSA interaction at BWI going viral. Vast. I closed my eyes, took another slow breath. Okay. Here we go. The supervisor approached Miller. Let's call her Davis, stern face, tight bun. Trying to keep things calm, but the damage was done. Miller, what is going on here? The line is backed up to baggage claim. He gestured towards me, or where I had been. That woman, questionable ID, claiming to be Congress. Davis frowned, looked at the ID Miller still held momentarily before tossing back. Congresswoman Crockett, that was Jasmine Crockett. Miller's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. How was I supposed to know? She didn't look. Didn't look what Miller finished the sentence. Her voice was low, dangerous. The crowd was still watching, phones still up. He faltered, shuffled his feet. Just procedure supervisor, verifying. Davis pinched the bridge of her nose. You caused a scene, Miller, a very public one. With a sitting member of the U.S. House of Representatives. His face paled, the blotchy red returned. She was being difficult, combative. He tried deflection, blame shifting. I heard her, Miller. She was calm, you were not. The whispers from the remaining passengers grew louder, confirming Davis's assessment. Yeah, he was out of line. Totally unprofessional. He kept poking at her. Miller shot a glare towards the onlookers. Stay out of this, official business. His authority was crumbling, fast. Davis stepped closer to him, lowered her voice again. You questioned her PIN. You know those are federally issued, right? You implied it was fake. I was just being thorough. Thorough or targeted, there's a difference, Miller. A big one. Especially now, especially here. He opened his mouth, closed it again. No plausible excuse left. The rulebook wasn't helping him now. It was trapping him. Davis sighed deeply, the sound of impending paperwork. Go to the break room. Now, we'll discuss this later. He hesitated, looked around, defiance still flickering. Now, Miller. He turned, shoulders slumped, walked away from the checkpoint, avoiding the gaze of the passengers. The palpable disapproval. Davis turned back to the line, forced a professional smile. Apologies for the delay, folks. We'll get things moving now. Please step forward. But the mood was broken. The efficiency shattered. People moved forward, but they were still talking, shaking their heads, sharing glances. The incident hung in the air. A sour note in the morning rush. They'd seen the mask slip. The abuse of minor power. The casual disrespect. And they'd seen the quiet strength that met it. That hadn't buckled. That hadn't needed to shout. Back at the gate, my phone was a relentless vibration against the seat. Twitter notifications, Instagram tags, news alerts. The video was everywhere. Clipped, shared, remixed. TSA Miller was trending. Flying while black. Jasmine Crockett. Headlines flashed across my screen. Congresswoman Crockett accosted by TSA agent at BWI. Video shows tense exchange over congressional PIN. Racial profiling allegations surface after airport incident. It was moving faster than I could track. My comms team was already in overdrive. Drafting statements, fielding calls. This wasn't just a moment anymore. It was a story, and everyone wanted a piece of it. The comments poured in, thousands, tens of thousands. A torrent of outrage, support, arguments. This is outrageous. He needs to be fired. Typical TSA power trip. Why didn't she just comply? Always gotta make it about race. That last one stung, predictable, depressing. The immediate leap to blame the victim. To invalidate the experience. As if politeness cures prejudice. As if quiet dignity invites disrespect. Then came the defenses of Miller. He was just doing his job, better safe than sorry. Maybe she was being suspicious, you don't know. Liberals always playing the victim card. The usual script, the predictable polarization. It was exhausting. But then I saw other messages. From people sharing their own stories. Similar encounters, different airports, different uniforms. Happened to me in Dallas. LAPD pulled that on me last week. Got asked for extra ID at a bank. The incident wasn't just about me or Miller. It tapped into something bigger. A shared frustration, a collective weariness. With the constant questioning, the suspicion, the burden of navigating spaces not built for you, where your very presence is seen as different than expected. I thought about Miller again, his smugness crumbling into panic deflection, his reliance on procedure as a shield. How quickly he tried to reframe it. She was being difficult, combative. The classic DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. It was textbook, almost boring in its predictability. But seeing it play out, on me in public, it felt different, sharper. A reporter called, then another. Cable news bookers started emailing. Did I want to come on air, share my story, condemn the TSA? Demand accountability. The pressure built. To react, to escalate, to perform outrage. That's what the media cycle wanted. Conflict, drama, sound bites. But that wasn't my style. Never had been. My power wasn't in volume. It was in precision. In choosing the moment, the words. Letting the facts speak. Letting the silence amplify the truth. I texted my chief of staff back. No interviews yet. Draft a simple statement. Focus on the pattern, not just the person. We need systemic accountability. And maybe suggest some additional training for TSA. A gentle nudge, wrapped in policy. Let them connect the dots. Let the incident resonate beyond the headlines. The video kept playing in my mind. Not just Miller's face, but the faces in the line. The initial impatience turning to confusion. Then to dawning realization, then quiet solidarity. Their reactions mattered. Their shifted perception was part of the story. The silent judgment they passed on Miller. More powerful than any shouting match. He thought he was performing for them. Asserting his authority. He ended up exposing himself. His bias laid bare under the fluorescent glare. For everyone to see. And record. And share. With the world. The statement went out, calm, measured, professional. Today at BWI, I experienced an interaction with a TSA agent that was unprofessional and suggested implicit bias. While I understand the importance of security protocols, their application must be consistent and respectful. Questioning the legitimacy of a sitting member of Congress based on subjective impressions is unacceptable. This incident highlights the need for ongoing training to address bias within all levels of airport security. Public servants must be held to a standard that ensures fair treatment for all citizens. No demands for firing, no angry rhetoric. Just the facts and a call for improvement. The reaction online was swift. Some praised the restraint. Class act taking the high road. Exactly the right tone, focus on the system. Others were furious, wanted more fire. That's it, he should lose his job. Too soft, she should sue. Why protect the agency that failed her? You can't please everyone, especially not online. But the goal wasn't universal applause. It was sustained pressure, quiet accountability. Let the video speak for itself. Let the public reaction build. Let the agency feel the heat. Internally, where change actually happens. Or doesn't. News outlets picked up the statement, contrasted it with the video. The juxtaposition was stark. Miller's aggressive insecurity versus my measured response. It made the subtext undeniable. Pundits weighed in. On the left, clear case of racial profiling, systemic issue. On the right, overblown incident, liberal playing politics. The usual trenches were dug. But the video transcended some of that. The visual evidence was hard to spin. Miller's expressions, his body language, the audible gasps. It told a story words couldn't easily twist. Then came the internal leak. Someone from TSA, anonymous source, told a reporter Miller had a history. Previous complaints, similar incidents, never disciplined. Just shuffled around, given warnings. The story shifted again. From a single incident to a pattern of neglect. Institutional failure. Now the pressure wasn't just on Miller. It was on Supervisor Davis, on BWI management, on TSA leadership. Why wasn't he stopped sooner? Who protected him? What does this say about the culture? The questions got bigger, more uncomfortable. Exactly as intended. My phone rang, an unfamiliar number, Washington, D.C. area code. I hesitated, let it ring. Voicemail popped up a moment later. TSA Administrator's office, requesting a call. They were feeling it. Good. I didn't call back immediately. Let them wait, let the pressure cook. Sometimes silence is the loudest response. Meanwhile, the internet did its thing. TikToks reenacting the scene, some comedic, some scathing. Memes featuring Miller's crumbling expression. The congressional pin became a symbol, unexpectedly. People posting pictures wearing pins, any pins. My pin, my proof. It took on a life of its own, a strange digital ripple effect. Podcast hosts dissected the interaction frame by frame. Body language experts weighed in on Miller's microexpressions. The tension, the attempted dominance, the eventual collapse. Morning shows debated TSA protocols, implicit bias training. Was it effective? Was it just lip service? The conversation spread beyond my specific experience. It became a proxy for larger debates. Race, authority, accountability, respect. Exactly what needed to happen. This wasn't just about one rude agent. It was about the systems that allow such behavior. The culture that tolerates it, excuses it, protects it. Until it blows up publicly. Then the damage control kicks in. The apologies, the promises to do better. Rinse and repeat. But maybe this time, with the video evidence so clear, with the public reaction so strong, maybe this time would be different. Maybe. I remembered something my grandmother used to say. She grew up in Jim Crow South, faced things I could barely imagine. Dignity ain't loud, child, it's sturdy. You stand your ground, quiet like an old oak tree. Let the storm blow itself out around you. Her words echoed now, across the decades. Stand sturdy, let the storm blow. The TSA administrator's office called again. This time I answered. Congresswoman Crockett, thank you for taking the call. The voice was smooth, practiced, bureaucratic. We are deeply concerned about the incident you experienced. Concerned, not outraged, not apologetic, concerned. Careful wording, always careful. I listened, said little. Let him talk, fill the space. He assured me they were taking it seriously. A full investigation was underway. Appropriate action would be taken. Standard lines rehearsed. I waited for the pause. Then I spoke, calmly, directly. What is the standard for appropriate action in cases like this? Especially when there's a documented history. A slight hesitation on the other end. Well, each case is evaluated on its merits. So prior complaints aren't considered merits. Another pause, longer this time. We are reviewing all aspects of the situation, Congresswoman, including personnel history. Good, because the public is watching. And they see the pattern, not just the incident. My tone wasn't accusatory, just factual. A statement of reality. He understood the implication. We are committed to ensuring this doesn't happen again. To anyone, commitment requires action, not just words. What specific changes to training and oversight are being implemented? Now, not after the investigation, now. He started listing initiatives, modules, reviews. More bureaucratic speak. I pushed gently. How will you measure success? How will agents be held accountable? What are the consequences for repeated failures? The questions hung there, uncomfortable, necessary. He didn't have easy answers. Because there weren't any. Not yet. The call ended with more assurances, more commitments. Polite, professional, unsatisfying. But a door had been opened. A conversation started at a level where change might happen. Might. The work wasn't done, it was never done. But a seed was planted. Watered by public scrutiny. Days turned into a week. The news cycle moved on, as it always does. Other outrages, other headlines. But the ripples continued. TSA announced mandatory retraining, focused on de-escalation and bias awareness. They didn't mention Miller by name, or me. But everyone knew. Supervisor Davis was quietly reassigned, away from passenger screening. Miller suspended pending investigation. The outcome remained uncertain, but not invisible. Small shifts, incremental changes. Was it enough? No. Was it progress? Maybe. The true measure wouldn't be in press releases. It would be in the experiences of the next person. The next black woman, the next person deemed different. Would they face the same suspicion, the same casual disrespect? Or would something have actually changed? Time would tell. Online, the conversation evolved. Think pieces emerged, deeper dives into profiling, authority. The intersection of race, gender, and power in public spaces. My office received emails, letters. People sharing their relief at seeing someone stand firm, quietly. Someone who didn't shrink or yell, but simply held their ground. Used the weight of their position not for privilege, but for principle. There were negative messages too, of course, threats, vile comments. The cost of visibility, the price of challenging the status quo. I didn't dwell on them. Filtered them out, focused on the work. Legislation, committee meetings, constituent services. The job I was elected to do. The pin stayed on my lapel. A small piece of metal, but now. More symbolic. A reminders. Not just of who I was, but of what happened when someone questioned it. Based on nothing but their own assumptions. Their own biases. It wasn't a victory lap, there was no triumph. Just a quiet affirmation. A moment of friction that exposed a deeper crack. And the slow, ongoing work of repair. Sometimes you don't win by shouting loudest. Sometimes you win by making them listen to the silence. To the truth that hangs heavy in the air. Undeniable, unflinching. Like an old oak tree. Standing sturdy. Waiting for the storm to pass. Or maybe, just maybe. Changing the weather. The viral moment. It wasn't loud, it wasn't explosive. It was quiet, almost conversational. After Miller's final, weak jab. Just doing my job, like you do yours, I suppose. I paused, held his gaze. Let the silence stretch just long enough. Long enough for everyone watching to lean in. Long enough for him to squirm under the weight of it. Then the words. Delivered calmly, clearly. Without malice, but with surgical precision. Agent Miller. My job involves oaths, laws, service. Yours involves security, not suspicion based on appearance. There's a difference. Learn it. A beat of absolute silence. You could hear the air conditioning hum. A sharp intake of breath from someone nearby. Miller's face, caught between anger and shock. Utterly exposed. He had no response, none possible. The truth landed, cleanly, undeniably. That was the moment that went nuclear online. That short clip, replayed endlessly. There's a difference, learn it. It became the caption, the hashtag, the soundbite. Not aggressive, just definitive. A quiet checkmate. Delivered not with a shout, but with the quiet weight of authority. Earned authority, not assumed. He tried to recover. Bluster faded into stammering. Procedure, I just security. But the air went out of him. Deflated by two simple sentences. That cut through the excuses, the justifications. Right to the heart of the matter. Respect, professionalism, bias. He looked away first, couldn't hold my gaze. That was the final power shift, complete, undeniable. Captured on a dozen phone cameras. Ready for the world to see. And judge. The walk away felt longer than it was. Each step measured, controlled. Leaving him there, in the wreckage of his own making. Surrounded by the silent disapproval of the crowd. That silence was his true condemnation. More damning than any argument. The quiet hum of judgment. The aftermath wasn't neat, it never is. TSA launched their internal review. Miller was suspended, then later reassigned to a non-public facing role. A bureaucratic shuffle, not a firing, predictable, frustrating for many. But the incident forced conversations, inside the agency and outside. Training modules were updated, not just with theory but with real-world scenarios implicitly referencing the BWI encounter. Small steps. Too small for some, but steps nonetheless. Supervisor Davis took an early retirement package a few months later. The stress, the scrutiny, it took its toll. Online, the discourse raged for weeks. Learn the Difference became a rallying cry against various forms of profiling and discrimination. People used it to call out bias in workplaces, schools, policing. It resonated far beyond the airport terminal. I saw it on protest signs, heard it sampled in songs, read it in academic papers discussing microaggressions and institutional accountability. It became a cultural shorthand. Of course, there was backlash, accusations of orchestrating the incident, of using it for political gain, of being overly sensitive, the usual noise attempting to drown out the signal. Fox News ran segments questioning the narrative, defending Miller, framing it as an attack on security personnel. Conservative radio hosts mocked the woke mob, defending me. The polarization deepened. But the video remained, unchanged, unfiltered. Its quiet power cutting through the spin. I did a few carefully chosen interviews. Not fiery cable news hits, but longer-form conversations. Podcasts, print interviews, where context could be provided, where the focus could stay on the systemic issues, not just the personal drama. I talked about the exhaustion of constant vigilance, the burden of representing while simply trying to exist, the hope that highlighting these moments leads to tangible change, not just fleeting outrage. I recounted the courtroom incident, the defendant dear moment, connecting the dots, showing the pattern across time and context, grounding the airport incident in a lifetime of navigating these subtle, corrosive biases. The goal wasn't sympathy, it was understanding. Empathy, maybe, but mostly a recognition of a reality often invisible to those who don't experience it. The incident didn't define my legislative agenda, didn't consume my work, but it became part of my public story, a reference point. Sometimes constituents would mention it, not with pity but with a kind of knowing respect. Thank you for standing up. Thank you for not backing down. It showed that strength isn't always loud, that dignity has its own quiet force. The final scene isn't in the airport or on a TV screen. It's months later, back in D.C., walking through the Capitol complex. Another day of votes, meetings, debates. The pin is still there. A staffer rushes up, holding a phone, Shows me a TikTok. It's a young black woman, dressed for an interview, nervous. She adjusts her blazer, takes a deep breath, looks into the camera. Okay, channeling my inner Crockett today. There's a difference, learn it. She smiles, a flicker of newfound confidence, walks off screen. I handed the phone back, a small, almost imperceptible nod. No victory lap, no triumphant music. Just the quiet resonance. The ripple effect. Continuing spreading. In ways you can't always see. But you know are there. Like an old oak tree. Standing sturdy,